Here we are in lesson 79 and part 2, and we're talking about the great players and their idiosyncrasies, the things that they did that was unusual or away from the norm, described by the purists as unorthodox, and yet they made it work. Well, the greatest players we speak on record is Jack Nicklaus. Tiger's some 4 majors behind him, and he was always been one of my professional heroes. Great player, but also an unusual player in as much as he had a great understanding of the golf swing and the ability to impart it. Most golf pros are wired not to be teachers. The thing that makes them great players is they're not wired like a teacher. So you probably get a couple of dozen at the most of great players who became good teachers. So you think of Tommy Armour back in the 40s and 50s, Jack Nicklaus himself, Butch Harmon and his brothers. They were great players and they became great coaches. Nicklaus dominated the game in the 60s with a power swing, and there's a lovely photograph of one of his books, and you can see that he was a real athlete. And because he was a strong player, he used to swing upright. A flat swing like little Gary Player would be around here, but Jack the Golden Bear, he lived above plane. Now, when Jack Nicklaus lived above plane, it meant that rather than the swing looking orthodox here, with the elbow folded, he was up here and the elbow appeared to fly. So this was called the flying right elbow of Jack Nicklaus. Now, if you ask Jack Nicklaus to flatten his swing, get his elbow close to his hip, you'd be doing him a disservice. The fact of the matter is, Jack was so strong, he could live above plane. So in plane, the elbow is here, below plane, the elbow is folded. But in Jack's case, the elbow flew. And that is consistent with a swing that lived from slightly above plane and therefore produced a cut spin movement. Now, Jack was quite capable of moving the ball from right to left with draw spin, but fade was his favoured shot. It gave him great control. But make no mistake, he knew how to draw it, as did Trevino. Trevino was known as a fader, but he could hit draw spin from right to left when he needed to. So, let's think about Jack the Golden Bear with the driver. He would take his orthodox setup, but my backswing at 5'9" would be here. Now my elbow would be in this attitude, but Jack was up here and he was strong. Now as players get older, they get the Champions Tour, you find they tend to flatten their swing because they get more help from the body that way. But when you're young and fit, like the Golden Bear in the 60s and the 70s, Jack was capable of living above plane. So here we go. I'm going to show you my backswing, which is in plane, and then Jack's, which was above plane. So you can see the ball has moved from left to right. Now what's interesting, you can have a swing that is prone to going fade or draw, but even if you have a fade spin swing like Trevino and Nicklaus, you can still hit draw off that same backswing. It just requires a bit of a reroute and a bit of creativity. So here's Jack's swing, above plane, but I'm going to change directions a little bit and hit you a draw. So upright swing up, and then I'm still going to hit you a draw. Flying right elbow. But you can see that I walked the ball the other way. Nicklaus would sit down with a scorecard and think about a tournament course before he played, and he would decide before he went out if that course was suited to fade spin or for draw spin. He would make that decision before he goes. But when Jack was young, he was incredibly strong, and he was playing with his dad one day and he said, "Dad, when are you going to buy me a Cadillac?" And he said, "Son, when you hit this drive past me." And to quote his dad, when Jack's ball passed his, it was still rising. So that's how Jack ended up with his first car. So let's just go through it again. Orthodox setup, neutral plane. If you live above the neutral plane, of course the elbow flies. That is not a fault, it's a characteristic. In the same era, nobody seemed to whinge or moan about Gary Player, who had the elbow close to his hip because he swung flat, short man with long arms. So it wasn't a fault. When Nicklaus had a flying elbow, it was the characteristic of a fade spin swing. And as you know, it didn't do too badly for his record. 18 majors and Tiger's still chasing him.